The United Kingdom is set to push for intervention in Syria and take it to the UN Security Council, suggesting the world should intervene in Syria. Would you want your child going off and taking part in a fight in Syria?
Well, no. I have difficulty with the potential of foreign countries interfering in an internal dispute in a sovereign country.
Dr. Keith Suter is International Relations Expert with Global Directions think tank. Doctor, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Here we are, sitting down here at the bottom of the world, and we think, why on earth would we get involved in Syria? Should we intervene in Syria?
That's a very good question. You've got to bear in mind there's already a lot of countries getting involved in Syria. It's part of a 1,300-year civil war between different factions within the Islamic community. So on the one hand, Saudi Arabia and some of the Gulf states that are Sunni are supporting the rebels. Meanwhile, the government, which is minority Shia, or the breakaway sect, but essentially a Shia government, is supported by Iran, parts of Iraq, and also the Hezbollah movement, and it's the involvement of the Hezbollah movement that's actually helped turn the tide in favour of the government. And so it's already a war that's got a lot of international intervention. The question is, should the Americans get involved? And Obama does not want to get involved. He's got a 3-point plan. 1, keep out of the Middle East. 2, rebuild America. And 3, deal with China. So this is really not for him. And a year ago, he said to the Assad regime, we will not get involved unless you cross a red line, which is the use of gas warfare. So in a sense, he said to Assad, do what you want, just don't use gas weapons. And now we've had the use of gas weapons. Everybody agrees that some sort of chemical has been used. We're not sure who's used it. But it's interesting that this has now become the tripwire, and Obama, a year ago, painted himself into the corner by this comment about gas weapons. And that's
let me ask you this, Doctor, then. And number one, what you say is it's a 1,300-year-old dispute between Shia and Sunnis. I'm not keen for my son, if he was a soldier, to go and put his life at risk in the middle of a 1,300-year-old dispute between between Shia and Sunni. Secondly, if Obama said the only way we would get involved is if someone used chemical weapons, that, to my way of thinking, makes it more likely that the rebels unleashed the chemical weapons, not President Assad.
And that's exactly what some of the conspiracy theories are going on about at the moment. It doesn't make a sense for Assad to have done it. It makes a lot of sense for the rebels to have manufactured something which would give the impression that he had done it. So you're quite right. In regard to your first question, I'm assuming your hypothetical son is in the Australian Defence Force.
Yes.
Don't worry. There will be no deployment of Australian Defence Force personnel. It's not going to be a rerun of 2003 and the invasion of Iraq. We're not going to do that. But where Australia is important is because, of course, we're a member of the UN Security Council, and in a couple of days' time, we're going to be the president of the UN Security Council.
Wow.
Right there at the centre of international action.
What right have foreign countries got to intervene in the internal affairs of a sovereign nation, which is Syria?
Well, we've had a lot, as I've already said, a lot of countries are already intervened because they're all working with their own national agendas. And in the case of Saudi Arabia and Iran, although Iran, of course, is not an Arab state, but it sees itself as the leader of the Shia community, and these two countries fight each other out on other people's territories. If you can't attack, from the Saudi Arabian point of view, if you can't attack Iran, you attack Syria. And there is a Shia corridor that runs out of, as I said, Iran, runs up through part of Iraq, goes into Syria, and then runs across to the top of Lebanon.
So these borders are all artificial. What we're really talking about is an historic, age-old tribal warfare.
Yeah, the borders are artificial. All of them, with the exception of Egypt, in the Middle East, were drawn up by Europeans, mainly after World War I.
I assume also that the Australian ambassador to the UN, who's going to be the chair of the UN Security Council, he doesn't get to make his own mind up on this. He will vote the way that Kevin Rudd tells him to vote, presumably. So there would be pressure on Rudd somehow at the moment.
This is the great irony. You can imagine, of course, that when Kevin Rudd began the campaign years ago to get Australia onto the UN Security Council, spending a lot of money in doing it, he never thought he might lose his own job in the very month it'll be his chance to chair the council. I can imagine that either him or perhaps Senator Carr would love to be in the international spotlight chairing the Security Council. I don't think the Prime Minister could do it, although he'd certainly be there for a day or so. But it would certainly, for me, it's ironical that it's the very month that he's going to lose his job that actually sees Australia for the month as taking it in terms of the roster as our turn as president of the Security Council. You couldn't write a novel about it, could
That
you?
would be driving him mad. Fascinating stuff, beautifully expressed. Doctor, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.
Dr. Keith Suter, international relations expert with the Global Directions think tank. He's very good.
Talking Melbourne.